Why do people litter? That's a question that my godson Seth asked me when he was about 4 years old. We were hiking in the woods and we started noticing litter, and so we started picking it up side by side. He just shook his head. Kristin, I just don't understand why people would treat the earth this way. There was so much sadness in his little voice. I don't know exactly how I responded in that moment. I know my heart was a lot softer than it had been many years before that. I used to get so angry when I would see people littering. 2 particular incidents come to mind. One was, it was bad enough those times when I was driving around the city of Chicago where I lived, and occasionally I would see somebody just open their car door and toss out big greasy fast food bags complete with, plastic straws and lids. But the day that it happened, when I was on a road trip with a relative, I pretty much lost it. So we were with she and her kids, and we had pulled over at a Wendy's, and everybody ate in the car. And then she took the bags and put them on this grassy knoll at Wendy's. And when she got back in the car, I was just, completely shocked. And I said, "You're not going to leave those there, are you?" And she said, "Well, I don't see any garbage cans anywhere." "Don't worry, they'll get it." I was livid. I stormed out of the car. I went and got the trash. I marched inside Wendy's, threw it away, marched back to the car. I got in and I said, "You are not related to me." And after a little while, she started laughing. And then I started laughing. And it really broke the tension. And she said, "I promise I won't ever do it again." We've laughed about that over the years. And sometimes that's what we need is laughter, right? To break up some of that sort of righteous anger that we get around things. Of course, we are all related, right? This is one of the key teachings, that we are related to all beings that the Native Americans call all my relations. They refer to all beings, all life, to remind us that we are all one. And so this key aspect, when one of us forgets or one of us tries to divorce ourselves from that ever interconnected relatedness, we're all affected by it, right? When one of us remembers the interconnection, we are all affected by that too. When one of us acts in a way that is in divine alignment with this kind of care and compassion and conscious awareness, we are all positively affected. When one of us acts out of that divine alignment, well, we know we are all affected negatively as well. So with all of this in mind, we begin to think about the ways that we show up. There is one other occasion that I can remember. I'm sure there were many, but one that stands out in my mind of this time when I sort of had this zealousness of idealism, was full of that kind of save the world energy in my 20s. And these particular issues really got to me around the earth. So one day I was on a busy, crowded street commuting. We were walking down the sidewalk, many of us, from the train to our different workplaces. It was fairly early in the morning, and so there was sort of that, just rush of city happening. And there was a man in front of me who was apparently drinking out of a disposable or one single-use coffee cup. And when he finished his coffee, he just tossed it aside. Businessman in a suit. And I was so mad. I picked up that cup and I ran after him. Excuse me, sir, you dropped something. And he kind of looked at me and sneered, and I said, "Oh, don't worry," very demonstratively, and walked over to the trash can. "I'll throw it away from you in one of the many trash bins along the street." So we all know that kind of sarcasm doesn't really get the kind of effectual change that we want to have, right? It's a growth experience, isn't it? And also that, there wasn't kindness or sort of a spiritual approach in that. I was learning, I was growing, I was evolving. Thank God we all do, right? But it takes time, doesn't it, when it's that kind of, as I mentioned, righteous anger, and it does have its own place. But there are ways, too, that we can work with that along with our other spiritual qualities and tools to communicate in a way with one another and to act in a way that we can really work together to make change. In the words of Jesus, what might have come closer is something like, "Father, forgive them, they know not what they do." Or maybe more to the point, "Mother Earth, forgive us, for we know not what we do." Because we're all in this together, right? And, we don't always remember, we don't always hit the mark. We're not always completely on the ball when it comes to taking care of the earth. But I know that we all do our best each day, and we can do better every day. It's what the Native Americans call our original instructions. Our original instructions to care for and to protect the earth. And I think that just because we aren't always right on the mark doesn't mean we can't vow and commit and do better every day. It's my personal affirmation, and it's my affirmation for all of us that every day we live a little more consciously on behalf of Mother Earth than we did the day before. Imagine if we all just did that, just a little better every day than we did the day before on behalf of Mother Earth. A lot of our issues would be solved. So, awareness, as always, in our spiritual journey is the first step, right, to transformation, to shift. And actually, our consciousness is one of the first things that does transform in the process. So the spiritual work is always key to these kinds of social shifts that we want to see in how we treat one another and how we treat all life and how we treat our earth home itself. Once we're aware of the consequences of our actions, well, then it's a little more on us, right, to do the right thing. When we're committed to our spiritual path, I believe that we naturally are more committed to the embodied earthly life in terms of bringing the consciousness with us, expressing that consciousness in the things we say and do. That's how we evolve through these embodied earth forms, right? These human bodies. That by owning that, by allowing the spirit within us to be our guide, but also using the gift that we have been given, the body, which is one with the earth. So we care for both in the same way. I think if you think about the cooperation, it's always helpful to have an image. And so I found this image, and it really speaks to me of what it might look like to be in that kind of cooperation. You see the weathered hands, the hands that have been digging in the dirt of the elder, and the child supporting that, and together that we heal, and that we move forward, and that we help care for this beautiful place that we call home. Native American author and teacher Robin Wall Kimmerer suggests that we immigrants become indigenous to place. I'm remembering when we first moved from the Midwest to Santa Barbara, and Brenly just sort of one day kind of walking heavy around the house and sort of pacing said, "This is not my flora, this is not my fauna." And at the time I thought it was really funny, but I get it now, that she was having this difficulty of transitioning from where there was an indigenous sense of place where we lived in Missouri to this completely different foreign place of different flora and different fauna and some different animals too. I'd never encountered a rattlesnake till I moved to California, for example. So this idea that Robin Wall Kimmerer offers us is really significant to think about the fact that, yeah, we are all immigrants, other than maybe those who are the Native Americans of this land. And learning to be indigenous, to feel a sense of rootedness and kinship with all, automatically makes us want to take better care. If we develop an intimacy with the plant and the animal life around us, we get to know it, we get to know the land and our neighbors, our human neighbors as well. As we develop that, then we care more about the well-being and the fate of all these living beings. And one of the ways we can do that, that Robin suggests, is naming things. Now, she's actually a botanist, and she's not talking about scientifically naming things, because that gets us in our head and can actually cause more separation in a way. But instead, the kind of naming that comes from the heart. Like you've spent a lot of time around a tree, and you call it old grandfather tree with angel wing. It's that kind of naming that has this sort of heart-based connection. Or, for example, when Grace, our goddaughter, lived with us, and we had this really bold, fast-moving squirrel that was always coming to the yard and running over some of the art pieces that Brenly had created and things, and a bit destructive but super fun little squirrel. And Grace named it T-Rex. And I have to laugh whenever I see this crazy little squirrel come into our yard, even when he's being destructive. Now I have kinship with him because he has a name. And it feels a little bit more of an intimate tie. So maybe try that a little bit this week, naming the things in your environment from the heart, and see how that might shift some of your relationships and some of your consciousness around overall care. So we will evolve, I believe, in the future, our consciousness, if we can take these teachings from the ancestry of our past and put them into place now, in this present moment. As for my own personal evolution and consciousness around litter, I had a key moment when I heard a message from Dr. Wayne Dyer. He said, when you see litter, say, oh, good, an opportunity to serve, and then go pick it up. Everything changed for me after that. Litter was no longer a trigger for anger, but an inspiration for sacred service. It's those messages that we can hear at the right time and the right place that can shift everything for us. So that day that my godson and I were walking through the woods and picking up litter, serving in this way, that question that he put out there, why do people litter? Like I say, I don't really remember exactly what I said then. It would have been more conscious, I think, than what it would have been the years before in my 20s. But now what I would like to say to Seth is, Seth, I think they just forgot their original instructions. But you remember yours, and so you care for the earth. And maybe other people will see your caring actions, and they'll remember their instructions too. Chief Shukin Wankasapa is going to share with us a little bit about humans being the youngest in the origin of order of our species on Earth. He'll help us remember and to act on our original instructions. Let's watch.
The message I desire to convey to you today is a simple one. Every day is Earth Day. Every day is an opportunity for us to express gratitude to our beloved Mother the Earth for the abundance and the sacrifices that she makes for us daily in order for us to survive. She is a living, sentient organism. And in truth, we have forgotten our original instructions as a species, which is namely to protect and preserve her, to be loving, responsible stewards of her, as well as all of our relations, all life upon this planet. Currently, in the Western world, we have forgotten and divorced ourselves from nature. There is this illusion of our supremacy and our domination over her. But if we examine the origin stories of all beings, all humans on this planet, there is a consensus that we are the last to be created, not the first. Therefore, we are not the pinnacle of creation, but rather we are the grandchildren. We have the most to learn because we are the youngest beings on this planet. In indigenous cultures, we have respect for our elders. So the elementals, earth, air, fire, and water, all of these are sentient living beings. In the next iteration of evolution comes the viruses and the bacteria. They too are our elders. And we have been deeply touched recently as a result of this pandemic, of the presence of this elder, this virus, who has been transmitting profound teachings about ourselves. The next iteration of evolution are the plant nations and then the animal relations. Each of them are also our elders, and we look to them for wisdom and counsel, as well as praxis on how to live sustainably upon our mother. Therefore, we are not the zenith and the pinnacle of creation with dominion and control and domination over all life, but rather we have the most to learn. We are currently in a global crisis, and this crisis has been foreseen by the indigenous dreamers and visionaries of the world. Not only this global crisis, but the pandemic was also foreseen. They saw that a time would come when human beings would forget their fundamental nature and connection to the natural world. And as a consequence of that would come her destruction. Right now, there is such considerable debate about whether global warming even exists. And there's this striving now, which is certainly favorable, to begin to achieve carbon neutrality and sustainability. However, there is still resistance to this. And to be quite frank, rather, we don't have 30 to 50 years. We must act immediately. And the challenge to this action is that fundamentally human beings have a resistance to change. We tend to desire to remain the same. And as a consequence of that, our planet is suffering. Beings within our planet are perishing. But make no mistake, it's not about politics and profits. It's about this planet and all people, as I mentioned, all of our relations upon her. For if the planet perishes, then so will the people, and profits and politics will not matter. Now, to be clear, the earth will certainly outlive us. But the question becomes, what is our legacy for future generations? How do we desire to be seen by the relations that we share this planet with? And how will our children regard us if we squander the resources that are available to us now? This is our time that we come together to unite in solidarity, to find creative solutions, to use our intelligence to create a sustainable opportunity for future generations of all of our relations. And for me, this commences within ourselves. That it is necessary for us to cultivate our own intimate relationship with the natural world, to spend time in nature, to take care of our own physical bodies, to ensure that what we are consuming is healthy, and not just the consumption of nourishment, but the consumption of what we are conveying in terms of our minds how we are expressing ourselves in terms of our health. We must commence at the individual level. As I speak right now, there are individuals, many whom are indigenous, who are literally placing their lives on the line to protect our water, our air, our earth, even the sacred fires, the cultural burns. There are individuals who are sacrificing to ensure the survival of these sacred and holy elementals. How many of you take a moment before you drink water to pray into that water, to express gratitude for the life it bestows? How many of you, before you consume any meal, will take a moment to acknowledge the sacrifice of those beings who are giving up their lives so that we may continue in life? This is where we must commence, in the individual level. How many of you have removed toxins from your home, chemicals that will destroy the natural world? How many of you are taking the time to decrease your consumption of products and goods that are often wrapped in plastic, which find their ways into the oceans? This is the level of awareness that is necessary for us to cultivate, not only individually, but also collectively, to share this with our families, with our communities, and with the world at large. Well, there are those that have a penchant for continuing this colonization and consumption, which will lead to the inevitable destruction of ourselves as a species and many other species along with us. So it is necessary, as I often say, that we must keep the earth in our eye. It is necessary for us as human beings to begin to achieve a level of balance within ourselves. First, individually, looking at the actions that we can take to ensure the Earth's survival, and then to move into the other circles of influence within our families, our communities, the nations, and the entire world. Because as human beings, we are all in this together. And so it may be necessary for you to educate those who have forgotten their relationship to the natural world. For we are all related. In the Lakota, we say, mitakuye oyasin, all of my relations. So even our relations who have forgotten their fundamental relationship to the earth are part of our family. And so it is incumbent upon us who have not forgotten that intimate, abiding relationship, who regard her as our beloved mother in a kinship way, to educate those and help them to remember, so that there will be a future not only for the human species, but for all of our relations, for 7 generations and beyond. This is a message I desire to convey to you today, and to encourage all of you to no longer speak about protecting the earth, but to take concerted action. I thank you all for listening, for your presence, wishing you many blessings for yourselves and your loved ones at this time. Ahechitulo, aho mitakuye oyasi.